Hey, what's up guys, it's Apollo Uchiha here, back with a new part of What If Naruto Had Asuras Memories. Now before continuing this part, if you haven't, then please do leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel. And yeah guys, I will be pulling up a poll and you will decide which of the two shall be the next movie tomorrow, okay? So stay tuned for the poll and please choose wisely, because yeah, I'm gonna make a good movie out of it. And please do suggest some of your ideas as well that I will implement in the movies that will be in the poll. So yeah, that's pretty much it, and without further ado, let's begin with our story. Obviously, Tsunade put her hat on the strode towards the council chambers, the smile never leaving her face. 3 years later, Naruto and Jiraiya strode down the path to the north gate of Konoha. While the older man did not change much in appearance, the young blonde did due to both puberty and his extensive training. The Uzumaki wore a tattered collared orange shirt and a grey undershirt beneath it that extended with a beaked hood. Over the orange shirt, a black flake jacket similar to the style of Kumogakure wrapped around from his torso to his right shoulder, where a red Uzumaki swirl was embedded. He also had grey pants and a pair of black shinobi sandals, a belt with the leaf insignia inscribed on the buckle, and a pair of bracers marked with storage ceiling formulas completed the look, not forgetting the most important of his possessions, a black and red barred cord, which wrapped around his left hand like a bracelet. The blonde's muscle could be seen visibly ripping beneath his outfit, and his face looked eerily reminiscent of his father now that his face had matured and his hair had grown longer. "I wonder how everyone's doing," wondered Naruto. Jiraiya laughed and slapped him on the back. "Well, you'll know soon enough, Gaki." The blonde grinned. "Konoha guard post. Oi, isn't that Jiraiya-sama and that kid Naruto?" asked Izumo. Kotetsu took a glance at the approaching figures. "Seems like it. Naruto looks a lot like the fourth now, though," Kotetsu remarked. Izumo nodded in agreement. The resemblance was scary. When Naruto and Jiraiya entered the gates, the blonde turned to the guards and smiled. "Hey, how you doing?" Izumo smirked. "Welcome back home, Naruto." "You too, Jiraiya-sama." Naruto winked at him and said, "See you around, guys." As the master and student continued to walk along the main street towards the Hokage office, Naruto could see that not much had changed in terms of infrastructure. All of a sudden, he heard squeals of Uzumaki-sama. "It's Uzumaki-sama, and Naruto-sama is back." The blonde sweat dropped. The village may not have changed, but it seems people sure have. He also hated the fact that they acknowledged him just because of his heritage. It's not like he had done anything worthy of respect in their knowledge other than being the firstborn of the fourth. Naruto spoke. "I can't believe that I wanted attention in the past, and now that I have it, I don't want it." Jiraiya shrugged. "It's just one of the things that come with being famous," replied the tall sage. Naruto sighed and tugged on his grey hood, pulling it over his head. He bent his knees and pushed off with great force, leaping onto the nearest rooftop. The blonde waved at Jiraiya to follow him. The tall sage jumped up after his student and both ran shinobi style across rooftops of the leaf towards the office of the slunk princess. "Hokage office, come in," said Tsunade as she heard the knocks on the door. She looked up and gasped at the pair that entered. While Jiraiya was undoubtedly the same, the Gorame barely recognized the blonde next to him, compared to the brat she knew from 3 years ago. Naruto pushed back his hood and smiled at Tsunade. "It's been a while, Tsunade-bachan." The fifth initiated a bone-crushing hug, but Naruto managed to withstand the strength behind it and even patted her back. "How's life been?" Naruto asked. "Oh yeah, usual. Paperwork that never seems to end every single day, and I don't even get breaks on weekends. Shizune don't let me have sick while on the job either," Tsunade complained. Her assistant, who was there, defended herself. "It's for your own good, Shisho. When you're drunk, you've no idea what sort of irrational decisions you're making." "Oh, shut up. Anyway, enough about me. What the hell happened to you in those 3 years?" Nothing much really. I've just invented a couple of techniques, Master Mokugeton, Jiton, and Onmyoton, and the 5 basic elements, and also gained some muscle mass. That's about it, along with some minor." "He really means major." Jiraiya cut in. "Improvements to my taijutsu, bukijutsu, and fuinjutsu," Naruto finished. Tsunade was rather impressed. To accomplish so many things in 3 years was quite remarkable. As if reading her mind, Naruto replied, "We bought quite a lot of time by training in Meobokuzan. Because a week there is a month there. We spent about," he paused to count on his finger, 13 years on that mountain. You forgot the fact that you spammed shadow clones. Jiraiya added. Oh yeah, Naruto rubbed his chin thoughtfully. That would be exactly 6,500 years worth of trading considering that I used 499 shadow clones each day, Uzumaki calculated. Excuse my language, but what the actual fuck? Tsunade swore. He was not definitely on a level beyond that of her comprehension, Naruto laughed. I know it's quite hard to believe, but don't worry, I'm largely still the same person, except for my power level, which according to Asura, goes beyond S rank and exceeds the Shodai's at his prime, which I believe is an exaggeration, but I don't really know. But hey, there's a drawback, 13 years of being on Mobukizan means 13 years I didn't get to eat at Ichiraku's, Naruto whined. Tsunade snorted. Heh, glad to see your personality is intact, and so is your love for ramen. I won't stop you then, since it's been 13 years. Since you last had your favorite food, go ahead and indulge yourself. I'll hold on to your sensei back for a more detailed report. Jiraiya groaned as Naruto grinned. Catch you later, Iro-sanin. Pulling up his hood, he disappeared in a flash of orange. Tsunade thought. He really is a lot like Hashirama Ji-sama. In many ways, despite that ridiculous amount of power he holds. He's still hilariously comical in speech. Ichiraku Ramen. The Uzumaki pushed the flaps aside and sat down on one of the bar stools without looking up from his spot. Tenoichi asked, what can I get you? One bowl of miso ramen with a slice of chashu, please, requested Naruto. The ramen chef gasped. No one had ordered that dish in 3 years, could it be? He looked up at the strangers who pulled his hood back to reveal his handsome face and his wild blonde hair. Scratch that. Make it 40 bowls, Oji-san, Naruto said with a smirk. Ayame cried. Is that you, Naruto-kun? Uzumaki nodded and hugged her over the bar table. It's good to have you back. I haven't had ramen for a very long time, Naruto remarked, as he drew back to his seat. Tenoichi chuckled. Great to see you back, Naruto. It's not seen my favorite customers in a long time, and my business has been going down ever since you left. 40 bowls of the usual, coming right up. While he cooked, Naruto made small talk with Ayame, while the girl learned of his exploits during the past 3 years. Without fully understanding it as a civilian, the blonde caught up with all the last news in the village. After having his fill, Naruto thanked the father and daughter before taking his leave. Next, he visited the hospital to meet Sakura. So the rumors are true. I heard a few days ago that you were coming back. I didn't expect you to look so different though, admitted the pinkhead. Everyone seems to be so amazed by my new look, but frankly I don't really see how it's that different style than myself, replied Naruto. Anyways, I heard that you are a student of Tsunade now. Sakura nodded. Yup, I'm a chunin now also. I studied Iryo ninjutsu extensively under her for the past 3 years, and I picked up quite a lot for her. When she's sober at least. Naruto laughed. I see, continue to do well. I'm sure you'll eventually develop your fort to be as good as Tsunade Bachan. Sakura was amused at the name he just called the most powerful kunoichi in the world just then. A medical assistant called. Sakura-san, the ER requires your help. There's a patient with third-degree burns. Naruto continued. Looks like you need it. I won't disturb you any further. See you later, Sakura. Sakura replied, same. She then spun on her heels and rushed to the emergency room to attend to her patient. The Uzumaki left the hospital and met up with his ex-classmates along the way, before settling back at his home. Naruto was surprised that the home was in a better condition than he had expected. He sent some shadow clones to deal with the layers of dust, but other than that, it seems pretty much the same way as he left it. As his shadow clones ran around the house, the Uzumaki looked out of the window with a wistful glance. I wonder, where are you, Gonha no Raijin? Thunder goddess of the leaf. Then his thoughts shifted. Perhaps he could have a good reunion spar with Kakashi-sensei. Nami no Kuni, in a small house of wood built by the town chief. Tazuna, a young lady, sat casually drinking coffee while reading the newspaper. A particular article caught her eye. That civil war in Kiri is still ongoing. She read further and the idea came up. It could potentially be a greater place to test our abilities. The lass finished her coffee, then dressed up in a white shirt and red trimming and black shorts. Over it, she wore a sleeveless black robe embezzled with a small fan and skirted with a navy blue sash she wrapped around her waist. She then slipped into black shinobi sandals which came up to her ankle. The girl sliding her tsugiri named Cataclysm through her sash and fixed a small pouch to the back of her sash, where an auxiliary wakazashi was secured horizontally through the pouch's cover. Lastly, she tied her hair into a fishtail braid, which fell by her right shoulder. Bangs formed around her beautiful face, while a long, side-swept bang crossed her face, covered her left eye completely. Her eyes, the dark color of outer space, bore deep into the souls of all who they chanced upon. It is said that eyes are the windows to the souls. Her reflects a profound darkness within, immediately visible to those who caught even a glimpse of them. The girl gathered all her possessions, which were rather minimal, and sealed them into a scroll, which she placed in the pouch. Now, I'll just have to join the Mizu no Kuni. I probably won't come back after this, so she took out one glance at the house before leaving it. The young lady headed over to the chief's house. Tazuna-san, the black-haired girl greeted. Yes? Tazuna asked, surprisingly to see the young lady here. I'll be off to Mizunokuni, and this time I'll be leaving permanently. The man nodded in acceptance and, with a ting of sadness, thanks for your family hospitality and renting out the nice house to me. I doubt I would have had anywhere to stay otherwise. She said, you're welcome. We're just repaying the debt from years ago. And should you ever need a place to stay, remember, you can always come back here, replied Tazuna. Thank you, the young woman responded gratefully. Overhearing the conversation, Inari ran up to the girl. Nei-chan, you'll be gone forever, asked the child sadly. She smirked and replied, not forever, but a long time. Be a good boy and listen to your grandfather, alright? Stay safe while I'm gone. You too, Nei-chan, said Inari as he hugged the young lady. She then put him down and ruffled his hair. Jane. Lightning enveloped her for a second before she disappeared as quickly as it came. The girl walked towards town. While on the way to the port of Wave Country, she passed by the local blacksmith's shop, where she had commissioned both her tsurugi and wakazashi, both her fine blades, crafted with amazing details, and they had certainly been an integral part of her past exploits. Out of the two, the Tenpachi was more well known, as she rarely used her wakazashi. Sorry about that. The world-renowned blade was forged from an alloy of adamantine and chakra steel, and every person that had tasted the folded metal of the blade had never lived to tell the tale. The last was brought out of her thoughts by Akiba, the master blacksmith, who waved at her from within his dimly lit workbench. She returned the gesture and carried on towards her destination. Then she walked up by the town square, the center of which was occupied by a marble statue of the country's hero. It was cut smoothly, and it was clearly modeled after a Konohanin due to the leaf headband on the statue. The statue also had 3 whisker marks on the inside of his face, bearing a close resemblance to that actual person. By now, the girl had already seen the statue over 1,000 times. She was no longer faced by the level of detail the sculpture had when to portray the hero. Their bridge was also another example of how well loved this Konohanin was. She continued walking till she reached the huge harbor, where many sea vessels in all shapes and sizes were docked. This was the reason the island of Wave Country prospered. Ships came from distant lands to carry out trades at the busy port of all. There was a distinct bustle in the area where goods were being loaded and unloaded. Captains of ships and their crew came to shore to take a break from their voyages, having a snack or two at the local markets before returning on board to resume their journey. Here she was certain she would find a vessel on the way to Mizunokuni. The last scanned the prayer and spotted a vessel marked with the 4 distinct sigmoids marks on its hull, identifying the watercraft as that of Kirigakure's. Currently, the Kirikurai was being loaded with the crates of supplies, the whole process of which was being monitored by what appears to be the ship captain. Now the issue was to see if it was a loyalist of rebel ship, or either of them. The rebels consisted of people with Kakegenkais, as that was what the revolt was about. The loyalists certainly wouldn't possess bloodline limits. Fortunately, she was able to distinguish between the two as shinobi with Kakegenkais and had special chakra coils which were adapted to produce whatever effects that was in their bloodline one look, and she could tell that the captain was someone who possessed a Kakegenkai. The young lady walked up to the gangplank and towards the captain, a burly dressed man in a blue coat. He noticed her appearance and from the corner of her eye and had an annoyed look on her face. Go away, lady. We don't have time to deal with whatever you want, did the man dismissively as he continued to manage the loading of goods by his crew. I wish to help with your rebellion. She stared calmly. The captain scoffed and looked up. What could a girl? He was flattered as throat went dry when he scrunched her more closely and recognized her features. The captain's eyes widened as she realized where he had seen this face before, that infamous black sword that colored of night by her side. with its decorates, scabbard and golden trimming, was unmistakably as well. You're the young woman nodded. So, do we have an agreement? Pardon me for my impudence. Forgive me. I did not recognize you earlier. And yes, I do hope you will join us. But that decision ultimately lies with our leader, Terumi Mei. I'll bring you to her as soon as the ship leaves Nami. We really appreciate your offer, and we could seriously use your help in that time of need. Do make yourself at home on board. We have a spare bunk if you don't mind sleeping there, offered the captain. The young lady smirked at his sudden change of attitude upon knowing her identity. Well, being famous did has its own perks. The captain showed her to the bunk and said, "The journey will take about 3 days, and we could be attacked by pirates of Oriagua patrols. Thanks for warning. If they're ever the case, just call me and I'll take care of it." And the was gone. The captain bowed gratefully. "Once again, thank you for your help." Hastily, he exited the bunk with Naruto. The blonde thrust his foot outwards towards Kakashi's abdomen faster than he could block. Instantly, the force snapped his ribs and went on to send him back crashing into a tree. "That really hurts," remarked Kakashi as he winced in pain. "Sorry," Naruto said sheepishly. The blonde walked over and placed a hand on his senseless ribs. Within seconds, the bone mended themselves and the pain was erased. "The healing ability of yours is surely amazing, Naruto," the copy ninja praised. "Eh? It's nothing really," Naruto replied, rubbing the back of his head in embarrassment. Kakashi shook his head in disbelief. From this short spar, he could tell that his student was way beyond his level, at least in taijutsu. Now for ninjutsu. "Katon Gokyaku no Jutsu," the copy ninja intoned, spitting out a decent-sized fireball at his student. The blonde disappeared as the flames engulfed him. Instinctively, Kakashi sensed something was wrong and jumped away. Luckily for him, he narrowly avoided getting punched by the original who busted through the ground. Kakashi frowned. Naruto seemed fond of attacking from the ground, and that made him predictable. The Kakashi then flashed through some hand seals and said, "Futon. Pressure, damage." The Uzumaki gestured his hands skywards. The ground erupted and from it a wooden hand emerged. It caught the futon chakra and absorbed it. "That's impressive," thought Kakashi. As if it wasn't enough, a wooden humanoid attached to that hand continued to rise from the ground. "Mokutan, Golem Jutsu," Naruto announced. Suddenly it ejected the futon chakra that it had gathered in its palm, essentially redirecting the attack to Kakashi. With no choice, the copy ninja slammed his hands together in front of his eyes. The tomo spun and merged before wrapping into a pinwheel pattern. "Kamui," Kakashi muttered. A distorted in space-time formed in front of the wind technique, blowing it into the dimension. The Jonin continued and absorbed the wooden golem after he was done with the futon chakra. By the time he was done, Naruto was long gone. Kakashi was wary as he was vulnerable in this state. Having expended much chakra, the ultimate utilizes of his technique that wasn't not of his own heritage. Quickly, he slid his hitate down to cover his dojutsu. He was fatigued. The Jonin knew that this was definitely nearby and kept his guard up. A sharp whistling sound caught his attention. Projectiles came flying at him, and he had no choice but to deflect them with a kunai on his hand. As he knocked the shurikens away from him, they dispersed into smoke and became shadow clones. "Henji," thought Kakashi. This was an interesting strategy. Who knew a basic academy jutsu could be used for something like this? They charged at him. But the Jonin was not famous without reason. "Raikiri," he yelled before attempting to use shape transformation to dispel the clones by the electric discharge, though it was not as powerful as he wished it would be. The resulting technique yielded the result Kakashi had hoped for and took out all the clones in vicinity. Naruto was nowhere to be found, but he knew where he was. His question was answered by 5 black orbs shooting towards him at high speeds. Something told him that deflecting them would be a bad idea. Once again, his instincts saved him his life. Kakashi dodged the high destructive truth-seeking balls, which slammed into a tree trunk instead. Now that the Naruto had mastered Onmyoton, their annihilative powers were tremendously amplified, instantly liberating everything they touched. Everything, well, except the blonde himself, though, where it was relatively safe before to get hit by a shukajo formed by it as what had transpired during their first bell test. Now, Kakashi would be lucky to even live after just touching it. The silver-haired Jonin sighed. The spar would certainly be over soon, and probably not in his favor too. However, he was still his student's teacher. He shouldn't lose to his discipline, regardless of how powerful he was. Well, he could at least try. Reluctantly, Kakashi drew a kunai and lifted his headband back to battle it was. Sunagakure, the Godame Kazekage, glanced at his village he held dear to him. The young leader would never forget the lesson he learned from the love for a blonde friend of his. If needed be, he would lay down his life for his village, the one that once scorned him for what he held, and tonight it seems like exactly the time he would uphold that promise to his whole village. Gaara was gazing at the night sky when a bird flying overhead caught his attention. It wasn't an ordinary bird. It was completely white and was about 10 times bigger than an smaller bird. This bird was a native to Suna, making Gaara narrow his eyes in suspicion. Upon closer inspection, there was a figure cloaked in black riding atop it, which explained why the Kazekage didn't notice him earlier. Against the background of the dark night, dotted on the cloak were red clouds. He had heard of this before. The man was most likely a member of the Akatsuki before Shukaku and after Shikaku. Gaara infused some chakra and prepared for battle. Suddenly, sand shot forth from the desert towards the airborne intruder, electrifying an evasion response. The Kazekage repeatedly attempted to capture the man with his sand for the next 5 minutes, albeit unsuccessfully. This drew the attention of his shinobi below, who couldn't assist in the airborne battle, or providing some level of moral support for their leader. The man was constantly ahead as the bird was rather swift in flight, making him a pain in the neck to catch. Finally, he retaliated by tossing blobs of clay molten in the likeness of bird. They flew towards Gaara, who used his sand to intercept them. They immediately exploded on contact, leading the Kazekage to deduce that this was Deidara from Iwagakure, a nuclean known for his tendency to blow up villages. It seemed that he did so through a special type of explosive detonating clay. The Suna shinobi blew alarms as the explosion rang and quickly began to evacuate the civilians into the town hall. Meanwhile, Gaara resorted to using the sand from his ground, which moved far faster than sand from the desert as it was heavily loaded with chakra. This caught Deidara off guard because he did not expect the speed to have increased so greatly. He managed to latch onto his left arm. Deidara took the opportunity with his left hand was still trapped inside Gaara's personal sand and mixed his deteriorating clay into it. The Kazekage closed his fist, Sabuko Suso. The sand encasing Deidara's arm closed in and crushed it completely, detaching it from his main body. The nuclean flinched but did not cry out in pain. Quickly he flew away. Meanwhile, he released more clay bombs at the Kazekage, who returned his personal sand quickly to his aid. He trapped around Gaara like a ball and shielded him from his explosions. The redhead then opened a hole to see what the blonde was doing. Heh, he won't be expecting this, thought Deidara as he grabbed majority of the clay left in his pouch. He molded a doll with a scary face. Deidara flung it between them, but it stopped in the middle of the two combatants. In a burst of smoke, the ghastly creation expanded to epic proportions. Gaara's eyes widened. The bomb was way bigger than any one of those things should be. Literally, Deidara dropped the bomb. It plunged down towards Sunagakure instead of the Kazekage, and by the looks of it, the village would soon cease to exist. Genjutsu. Sasori then yelled out, "You will not stop this. Today, you will see my art." Katsu! Deidara screamed. The titanic clay statue detonated, producing an explosion that brought up a great amount of smoke. All seemed to be doomed. When the large haze was cleared, it was a large sand dome covering the village. Gaara single-handedly delivered Sunagakure from utter destruction with his personal sand, but it had taken a lot out of him. Deidara smirked and slid his hands into a pouch, seizing the remaining clay. His nimble fingers pressed and danced quickly across it, transforming it into a bird, which he chuckled at Gaara. It took off straight for the Kazekage, who was still panting from exhaustion that much chakra. However, he managed to will his sand to wrap around him completely and close him off from the world around. The bird bombarded harmlessly against the sand. Deidara was unfazed as he had expected the Kazekage to do so. After all, he had planned long beforehand for this. The detonating clay he had mixed into Gaara's personal sand earlier began to emerge. Within the spear, the Kazekage had created to protect himself, and at the blank range, he would be susceptible to damage. "Katsu!" Deidara shouted. Within the shell of sand, the distinct boom of explosions rang out. For a moment, all was silent. The cell holding up the sphere began to crack before falling apart, revealing a Gaara still suspended by his own sand. but very much alive. Cracks marred his face, evidence of his sand armor. Now that this integrity had been compromised, the redhead no longer had a functioning defense between him and the blonde. All it would take was one more strike. At the same time, he was also aware the sand that had been used to shield Suna was also his personal sand, meaning that it also had traces of explosive clay within him. Gaara would have to shift the entire mass away from the village, or the village would be doomed once again. With great agony, the Godame willed the massive block of sand to shift away from the center of the village to outskirts. The Hydra watched but did not attack him. This was the Kazekage was protecting his village, as the Kazekage has also exhausted him along himself. And he was right. As soon as Gaara let go of the sand and dropped it into the desert outside of Suna, any remaining chakra left was drained from him. The Hydra immediately seized the opportunity and flew towards him atop his bird. Before the Sunanin Blue could assist their leader, the Nuclean captured the Kazekage and flew away, earning screams of anguish from the people of Suna. He did look back. Eastern Sea. 2 days later, the captain of the ship bursted into the bunk. "Ma'am, we're under attack by patrol." The young lady nodded and quickly grabbed her swords before ascending the stairs to the deck. Once the deck filled, fights between the rebels and the loyalists were already beginning. A portal boat was roughly 10 meters away from the Kirikakuri, tethering to it by ropes. The Kiri Coast Guards, marked by Kiri headbands and an armband embezzled with their organization logo, had jumped onto deck to engage the rebels. She scanned the area where clashes were happening. There was 15 coast guards and 20 crewmen. Without a word, she took off the nearest enemy and blitzed him with a punch. He didn't see it coming and was knocked out into the water, already unconscious before he hit the surface. She sensed an attack coming from behind and she spun around while drawing her tsurugi from its sheath. The razor-sharp edge of the tenpachi sliced the soft tissue of his forearm easily, disorienting his arm with pain and causing him to drop his weapon. The last finished him off with a fatal blow to his skull. She found her next target just as he found her. The guard pumped water onto his mouth at her, full expecting the young woman to be blown away. Instead, she seemingly vanished without a trace. Here, it was too late, as his torso was torn violently in half by the girl's sword from behind. While her back was turned, another guard took the opportunity to thrust his kunai at her. Before his kunai reached her, he was suddenly thrown overboard by nobody. The remaining guard had already noticed that the main threat was the lass on deck. Quickly, they turned their attention to the girl. The young lady flickered her tsurugi to get rid of some blood on it before returning the blade to its sheath. The guard closer to her raised his sword in obvious downright swipe. She sighed internally at the poor swordsmanship these days. Before he could even complete the swing, the young woman caught his sword by its hilt with her left hand and halted it. With just a single hand, she twisted his arm until he bent back in pain. The lass swiftly struck his sword hand with her knee, forcibly disarming him. She followed up with a snap of her foot and plunged it into her opponent's stomach. This sent him crashing into his comrades. The girl moved on to the remaining 10 coast guards. One of them steeled his nerves and charged at her. She sidestepped his punch and seized his outstretched arm. Using his own momentum against him, the young woman whirled her opponent upside down and threw him onto the wooden floor, with force shattering some planks. The lass, who was still grabbing the guard's arm, wrenched it anti-clockwise and brought him great agony. She stomped on his face with her foot and knocked him out cold just as the next enemy came flying at her. The girl leapt back and avoided the guard, who slammed down on where she just was a moment ago. She drew her wakizashi as he brandished his kunai. Before proceeding to engage in a rapid-fire slash match, she proved superior and sustained no damage at all, while she wholly tore his chest to shreds. Finally, she delivered the grace to his jugular, serving his windpipe as well. The other 8 grew wary of the young lady. Meanwhile, the rebels already knew to stay out of the way of their ally. They watched her in awe as she skillfully took down 3 more of them with just hand-to-hand combat alone. Another Kani Jonin ran towards her and stabbed her knife into her chest. However, she faded away and was replaced by another guard who hacked up blood and copious amounts. The remaining guard that had just stood in a group were stunned as she appeared suddenly amidst them. With a low sweep, she knocked one of them off their feet and sent him overboard. The girl pushed off the floor and flipped overhead while yanking a kunai from her holster. She landed squarely on the shoulders of the loyalist, stabbing the steel daggers into his neck and ending his life. After his knees buckled and he collapsed to the floor, the young lady ripped the kunai out and redirected it at the incoming guard, who deflected the attack. She kicked the guard with enough force to knock out his teeth, only for him to explode in a shower of water. Mizubanshin, the real one, dashed through the water, which concealed him till the last moment, where he burst out and struck a kunai on her neck. The moment unexpected thing happened, she too disappeared in a burst of water. The Jonin was stunned, not realizing that the water that had just made her wrapped around him until it was too late. Suiton, Suryo no Jutsu. The water from his own Mizubanshin easily rose up from the floor to become a copy of the last, who now had a hand on the water prison technique, trapped the man. It was only a matter of time before he would lose his breath and die. Only 2 guards were left standing now. They shivered despite their experience. That young lady had just took out 13 of their comrades without much trouble, all of whom were joining. This was suicide. There were 20 rebels on the deck with them, not including the girl. They had easily slayed their fellow guards. They would not get out alive if they didn't run now. Quickly they scrambled onto the edge of the deck and leapt for their patrol boat, without a thought of their unconscious friends left on board. Scum! She gripped the ropes that were still tethered to the boat before they could escape. Katon, Ryokan no Jutsu. Fire burst from her throat and tore down the ropes, quickly shooting across the length. The guards' eyes widened in horror as they saw the approaching threat. Just as they tried to jump on their boat, the flames engulfed their vessel and roasted them alive. The 2 screamed before tumbling into the water, which extinguished their burning bodies. One was out cold from the pain, while the other was still barely conscious. He barely managed to keep both his teammate and himself floating. The young woman dragged all their bodies on board, both unconscious and dead, to the side of the deck before dumping them into the water where the 2 guards were. Take your friends with you, she spat. The guards were surprised at the act of mercy. Finally, realization dawned on them. He knew this girl and had seen her from the bingo book. In the chaos of battle and the speed at which she fought, he had been unable to recognize her, but now he knew the reason why they were beaten so easily. For someone with power as vast as hers, she had chosen to mostly use taijutsu in that fight, and not any of her other weapons. Another reason why she wasn't identified earlier. If they had known, they would have retreated at the very beginning, for they stood no chance against her. She had only been toying with them, the 15 Jonins of Kirigakure. If she had so chosen, she could have dispatched all of them with a minute or less without harming a single rebel here or the Kirigakure itself. Now that she had practically let him go free, he wasn't about to hesitate. Let's just change her mind. Quickly, he grabbed onto the teammates that he could swarm away with them in tow. The young lady turned back, only to find very rebels on board staring at her with reverence, awe, and some level of disbelief. What? She asked, earning a flinch from every single man on the deck, as they would be her next target. The captain cleared his throat. Every hand on the deck returned to their duties. With some murmurs, the rebels then returned and resumed their duties. Prior to the attack, the captain then walked up to the girl. Thank you, ma'am. You were rather impressive back there, and I'm sure you gained the respect of my men. Is there anything I can do for you before we arrive at shore? The young lady shook her head. I am the one who is hitching on the ride. Take it as my rent, she replied with mirth. With nothing more to say, the black-haired lass returned to the bunk. The captain watched her retreating back with a wondering gaze. She was a mysterious person and a force to be reckoned with. At that, the captain was grateful to have someone like this on their side, a trump card to turn the battle towards their favor. He quickly knew that they could already taste the victory in their tongue, getting rid of likes of Yagura and his oppression. At the same time, she could be here to gain their trust before betraying them to Yagura. Despite wanting her help, one could never be too careful with someone as powerful as her. He cast those troubling thoughts aside and continued to the ship. Only time will tell what will happen. Konohagakure, Tsunade Shisho, I have urgent news from Suna. Shizune cried as she rushed over to her teacher's desk with a scroll. What is it? Asked the Godaime, who took over the scroll and unfurled it. Her eyes scanned quickly across the document. Written in the script she recognized as the Tamaris, as she was the diplomatic person between Suna and Konoha, and frequently wrote in. Despite receiving no answer from Shizune, its words the thoughts said enough to express the severity of the situation. Once her eyes finally left the page, Tsunade's face was one of horror. "Anbu!" the Hokage barked. An operative appeared in a kneeling position before her. "Bring me Hatake Kakashi, Harano Sakura, Naruto Uzumaki here as soon as possible," she ordered. The Hanbu bowed his head. "Hi," he dispatched, carrying out the Godame's order. Tsunade broke knitted in worry. She could only imagine Naruto's response when he hears that his friend has been kidnapped. 10 minutes later, the three shinobi arrived at her office from their respective locations. The urgency with which they had been summoned by led to Kakashi asking the million-dollar question. "What are we here for, Tsunade-sama?" Her face grew grave as she replied, "Gaara, the Kazekage, has been kidnapped by Akatsuki." "What?" Naruto almost shouted. "Please tell me this is a joke." Tatsumaki stared at Tsunade, who returned the gaze without changing her expression. His fears were confirmed. "It wasn't. It can't be." "Who were they?" "They that of Iwagakure. I don't have the details, but I only know that Gaara was captured during an attack on the village. So, now what do we do? Suna has requested for us, for a research and rescue team for us. So I gather you three. Though Naruto is a Jinchuriki, I'm confident he can handle the Akatsuki. I'm sure you would like to rescue your friend, right?" Uzumaki nodded. "Yes, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to crush Akatsuki." Naruto thought in anger. "Alright then, pack up and make sure that you make your way safely to Suna. Naruto, especially you. They'll update you on the details and how to find Gaara." Tsunade replied. "Why can't they do this themselves though?" Sakura queried curiously. "The Akatsuki composed of S-rank nucleons that work in pairs. Given that they weren't able to stop Gaara's capture, it's no surprise they wouldn't be able to retrieve him on their own," Kakashi answered. "Not to mention his partner, Akasuna no Sasori," Naruto added. He was staring to feel impatient. Every second they wasted here was every second that Gaara could be killed. "Can we go now? Gaara needs us," Naruto urged. Kakashi nodded, sensing the students earn rest. The blonde saluted before leaving. The other members of Team 7 quickly followed him on the door. As the mahogany door closed, Tsunade released a troubled sigh. "Shizune, get me some sake." Mizuno-kuni, everyone aboard the Kirikurai disembarked. The captain ushered the young lady to the subterranean hideout, where all the rebels were gathered. From her observation, there were roughly only 100 bloodline users left, which definitely wasn't good for troop morals. Despite their innate talents, the loyalist army was far larger in size and outnumbered them in 100 to 1. The captain brought the last to the leader, a tall older woman with unburned hair, dressed in blue. She seemed surprised to see the girl, which wasn't expected. "How often did you see one of the S-rank ninja, rumored to be one as powerful as the Kage?" Additionally, the leader was jealous of her beauty. The young female was more gorgeous than her, and that was saying a lot, as the woman was a stunning looker herself. Waving those thoughts aside, she brought the two to a room that served as a makeshift office. The room was dimly lit by flaming torches, and the wall, because the underground facility was supposed to be a secret and electricity was not a resource that could be afforded, much less tapped into here. The captain nodded and introduced herself. "This is Terumi Mei, leader of the Kiri rebel forces, and Mei-sama, I believe there is no need for introduction here." Mei nodded. "I know very well who you are. It's a pleasure to meet a young Konoichi in such a world with such power." The last replied customarily. "You think too highly of me, Terumi-san. I'm here to offer my help for the rebellion," the captain reported. "She single-handedly took out the patrol of 15 Jonins who attacked us while we were on the way here, though she left one alive to take his friends back with him." Mei raised an eyebrow. "Though I appreciate it, why would you want to help us? Is there anything for Konoha?" The girl thought of a skull. "I do not wish to affiliate myself with the Leaf, despite the moniker I have been given. As for now, it's to test the capacity of my own abilities. 10,000 shinobis should be an interesting fight." The Terumi was bemused by her answer, but don't probe further. She was well aware of the depth of the power Konoha's Thunder Goddess possessed, but how much it would boost the war effort. In fact, if the tales of her numerous exploits were true, she could possibly take on the army alone and still top it off. "Alright then, thank you for your offer. We really need your help in this. If you don't mind me asking, why did you leave one Coast Guard alive? Wouldn't he be going back to Yagura to inform him of your presence?" The young lady smirked. "That just makes it all more the fun. Nothing better than crushing the enemy when they are convinced that they are ready." Mei let out an amused laugh. It may have sounded arrogant or overconfident from someone else, but she knew that the Konoichi before her was capable of what she just said. The rebel leader stood up, shook the girl's hand. "We look forward to working with you, Uchiha-san." The firelight from the torches danced in Sayori's Noir eyes and illuminated the playful smirk which traced her lips. "As do I," she said. As this is where I'm going to be leaving this part of, guys. Sorry about the mispronunciations in this. Yeah, I'm kind of bored with mispronunciation in Japanese as well. One of you guys were saying, why do I say the Japanese words? Well, my guy, it's a fiction, so the writer just put down those words there, and I have to, well, say it, even if I don't want to. And there is no translation. If there are, I will say the translation, so don't worry. And other than that, if you like the video, then please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And this is Apollo Uchiha, and I'm signing out. Peace.